We continue profiling each division in the days between Christmas and New Year's, and we talk about the very competitive, very exciting AL West. We have managed to take Susan Slusser's eye off the San Jose State Ball State game tomorrow. We've taken her eye off that for just a moment, and we're joined by Brian McTaggart, who is our Astros insider. Folks, good morning. Happy New Year to both of you. And Susan, I'll start this in your backyard here. Are the Oakland A's the team to beat in the AL West in 2021?
Well, I know that's what's always on your mind, Matt. You know, the A's are obviously coming off a season in which their goal was to win the division. They did that. They got out of the first round for the first time since 2006, just the second time in the Billy Beane era. So they feel good about that. They've been very consistent, 97 wins in 18 and 19. They extrapolate out to 97 wins this past season. But they've got 10 free agents, including their essentially team MVP of the last year, Liam Hendriks. Marcus Semien, who finished third in the MVP race 2 years ago. They'll probably lose both of those. What gives them room for optimism? The rotation is still one of the better ones in the league, even if they lose Mike Fiers. So they feel good about that. Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, both coming back. Chapman's coming off of hip surgery. But those are two of the best young corner players in the game. So they like where they are still. You know that the front office is going to find a way to keep them competitive, as will Bob Melvin on the field. And the rest of the division, it's always interesting.
Brian, same question to you. Is Oakland the team to beat next year in the AL West?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they are. They won it last year and pretty handily over the Astros. You know, the Astros did turn around and beat the A's in the playoffs, and, you know, that sort of helped, I guess, heal the wounds for some Astros fans of not winning that fourth straight AL West. But, you know, they have a really solid core coming back. And even if they don't resign George Springer, don't resign Michael Brantley, I mean, those two guys are 1-2 on OPS on their club last year, so losing them would be a big loss. They'll have to replace them in some form or fashion, but they still have their entire infield back. Gurriel, Altuve, Bregman, Correa, one of the best infields in the game. They suddenly have a pretty good rotation, 1 through 5. Some young guys stepped up. They got to fill some holes in the bullpen, but I think they'll go into the division thinking that they can win this, that they will be the team to beat. But you got to give it to Oakland. They won it last year. You know, how do they replace Hendricks? You know, what's their health going to be? But I think those two teams by far are the class of the division, and it drops off pretty significantly after that.
Hey, Susan, both of you guys mentioned Hendricks, one of the best relievers in baseball the last couple of years. But as you know, it's not just Hendricks. There's about 4 guys in that bullpen, key pieces that are not on the current roster. So what are the plans going forward with Oakland and its bullpen?
Well, Tommy, you've got to figure that the A's are trying everything possible to bring back, especially Yusmeiro Petit.
Mm-hmm.
Hendricks, we know, will leave. The A's do not pay for closers. Hendricks could wind up maybe even in Houston. But Petit, I think, and Soria are still A's targets. And even if they don't come back, I think the A's feel very good about Jake Diekman as a potential closer. He only gave up 1 run last year on a solo homer towards the end of the season. He gets first crack, I think, at the A's closing spot. They also really like J.B. Wendelken, who has the stuff of an elite starter and is in the bullpen. Lou Trevino had a great 2018. If he could come back into that kind of form, he could be in the mix there. And a lot of young guys, you know, one option I potentially like in the bullpen is a guy who's not been able to stay healthy as a starter. Very tall, young lefty. A lot of comparisons to Randy Johnson. I like A.J. Puck there eventually, if the A's decide maybe that's the best usage for him. So the A's feel good about those options, and there's no front office in baseball better at finding gems in the bullpen. We've seen that from each of the last 3 A's closers who've all been all-stars.
Indeed. Hey, Brian, this for you, because you mentioned earlier that the A's and Astros make up the class of the division. I think we'd all agree with that. But between the Mariners, the Angels, and the Rangers, is there one of those 3 teams that you'd identify as an interrupter, a possible sleeper?
Well, I'd probably say the Angels. I mean, I think the Rangers and Mariners are no secret. I mean, they're pretty deep in rebuilds at this point. But, you know, the Angels still have, they still have Mike Trout, the best player in the game. They have Anthony Rendon, who, is an MVP caliber player. And they have a good lineup. Shohei Ohtani's in there as well. Will he come back and pitch? But with the case of the Angels the last few years, it's going to come down to pitching. And right now their pitching is thin, both in the rotation and the bullpen. And until they can get that sorted out, I just don't see them competing with the Astros and the A's in the division. But I do think the Angels have enough talent to where they're closer certainly than the other two teams in the division are, with the Rangers and the Mariners. Looks like still trying to rebuild and get back up to where they were a couple of years ago.
Brian McTaggart, Susan Slusser joining us on our Days Between discussion, hitting every division in the days between Christmas and New Year's. Thanks for your thoughts on your AL West. Happy New Year to both of you. Thanks for being on with us today.
Happy New Year, guys.
Tom, I'm wondering who you would identify in that group. Like, you could make a case for the Mariners trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe one or two more trades that they can make with the Mets to completely rebuild the shelf there.
Well, Jerry DiPoto's overdue.
The previous administration of the Mets did more to rebuild the Mariners than the Mariners did. Anyway, so between those three teams, Texas, Seattle, the Angels, which one's the
Yeah, I'm going with the Angels.
Okay.
I think they still have a move left in them this winter, whether it's really big like Real Muto or Bauer, even if it's a level below that. I don't think they're that far off. You go back last September, Matt, they were actually the best team in the division in September. I thought the pandemic really harmed them. They had a lot of new pieces, a new manager, and they started terribly. And in a 60-game season, you just couldn't recover from it. So star power, they've got it, man. I mean, I thought this last year even. Ohtani is such a key for me. I like what Justin Upton said. Ohtani is the most talented player in baseball. And when you think about it in literal terms, he's right. He's a guy who can throw as hard as Garrett Cole and hit the ball as hard as Aaron Judge in the same player. But he hasn't been able to stay healthy on the mound. I think this is the year where they're going to have to decide, can they keep doing the two-way thing with him? Because in some ways, they're compromising not just his health, but his pitching and his hitting. You're not getting the absolute best in each discipline from Ohtani, but he can be a game changer. Rendon's one of the 5 best hitters in baseball. Trout is the best player in baseball. There's a lot there to like with this team. Pitching-wise, I don't think they're that far off. I really don't, but I do think they need to add. Bauer would be perfect.
He really would. The same way everybody talked about the certain Orange County native being perfect in last year's market, but I was I never thought that was going to happen. I think that there's a much more real chance that they land Trevor Bauer. I like what Perry Manassian's done. I give him a lot of credit because bringing on a shortstop to replace Andrelton Simmons wasn't going to be easy. He found his guy in Jose Iglesias. I would agree that the Angels could be pretty good this year, too.